Well, I want to say good afternoon. My name is Tequila Barnes Hall. I'm with College Foundation of North Carolina. And if you're joining today, we're talking about North Carolina's National College Savings Plan and the NC 529 Employer Guide. Just a few housekeeping rules before we begin today. I just want to let you know that we will be having our formal Q&A at the very end of our presentation today, and that if you have questions, feel free to ask them during that time, or you may also include your questions in the chat. So we're very happy to have you join us this afternoon. I want to just take a moment to introduce today's presenters. Again, my name is Tequila Barnes Hall, and I'm the 336 NC 529 Regional Representative. We'll also have Skip Watts join us this afternoon. He is the 828 East NC 529 Regional Representative. And Gabrielle Anastasia, she is our NC 529 Services Supervisor. Let's talk about our topics this afternoon. So we're going to talk about how the 529 works. What are the benefits of adding the NC 529 to your existing benefit package? And how do I set up a NC 529 group plan for my employees? We definitely want you to have the opportunity to show your employees they matter. So I just want to talk about the Glassdoor's employment confidence survey that was actually given a while back. And it basically states that 60% of people reported that when they were considering a job, they were looking at the benefits that were being offered. And so that's definitely an important factor as your employees or future employees think about your institution. Then there's another survey that I want to just talk to you about briefly. So this is a survey that was done by the Employee Benefit Research Institute, or the EBRI, and it was entitled Employer Approaches to Financial Wellbeing Solution Survey. And what it basically says is that there are four most common financial wellness initiatives that are being offered by institutions. And for the purposes of our meeting today, I'm going to just talk to you about three of the four. And you'll see that when they looked at financial planning education, that was 60%. Tuition reimbursement was 64%. And then last but certainly not least, basic money management tools were at 49%. So let's just take a moment just to talk about how the plan works. So we're going to just talk about some of the major points that will be important to you as you think about adding this to your existing benefit package. So when we talk about 529, what is it? So 529 plans are named after the IRS code 529, and they're designed to help individuals save for all different types of qualified educational expenses. And so we're talking about things like tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, and other equipment. Now, when we're talking about other equipment, that could be something, for example, like a computer. Now, I also want to make sure that you know that every 529 plan enables participants to qualify for both federal tax benefits, and if they're a North Carolinian in the NC 529 plan, they can qualify for state tax benefits as well. The NC 529 plan is authorized by the North Carolina General Assembly for the state, and that happened in 1996. And it's established and maintained by the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority, and is administered by CFI or College Foundation, Inc. I start a 529 plan. I always think that's a great question for employees to ask. And of course, most families will have to pay at least a portion of their children's college expenses, or it could be other family members. And that's a lot easier when individuals start to plan ahead. And by taking advantage of the NC 529 college savings plan, that will help them get started on their share of future expenditures. So let's talk about the 6 primary ways to use the NC 529 funds. And so you'll see on the screen, there's a great infographic to help you see what those things are. So the first one we see here are the college expenses, including things like tuition, books, fees, room and board, and like I mentioned to you before, computers. That's one primary way. And then we're looking at trade school expenses. It could be for apprenticeship programs. And I just want to make sure you understand, as long as those are registered with the U.S. Department of Labor or the state's apprenticeship agency. For K-12 education, my colleague is going to talk to you a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Special needs equipment, and then it can also be used for student loan payments. Now, as we talk about the NC 529 plan, it's open to residents of any state. And this is something that is done directly with enrollment through CFI, which means no fees or sales charges for being able to enroll. And then we're going to talk about the major features of the program this afternoon. We'll talk about it being accessible, affordable, tax-free earnings on contributions, the flexibility of the plan, as well as it being comprehensive. So let's talk about accessible. That means anyone 18 or older can establish an account for someone else. And so when we think about, who those individuals are, it could be biological parents, grandparents, aunts or uncles. Grandparents love to establish these types of accounts. It could be a neighbor or friend of the family. Or you might have employees that want to establish an account like this for themselves because they're thinking about going back to school. We'll talk about a little bit about affordable. How is this affordable? So again, I mentioned to you there are no enrollment fees, and the minimum contribution is as low as $25 per contribution. So again, the minimum contribution is as little as $25 per contribution. We have some low total annual asset-based fees and expenses, so you can see the range right here on my screen. So we're looking at 0.25% to 0.39%. And there are no extra fees unless you request some type of special service. And so we're talking about things like courier delivery or receiving paper communications versus electronic, and maybe something like ongoing wires. So outgoing wires could be something that could be an extra fee. Now, the beauty of this program or this plan is that your employees can contribute whenever and however they want. So when we're talking about whenever, that can be on occasion or it can be regularly. And when we talk about how they want to contribute, that might be something like a lump sum contribution, or perhaps it may be an automatic draft. When we're talking about lump sum contributions, some examples would be personal checks. We're talking about EFT, it could be money orders, or it could be a transfer or rollover from another Section 529 account. It could be your Coverdell Education Savings Account. Qualified savings bonds. So you'll see here in parentheses, I'm talking about Series EE or I issued after 1989. Now that we've talked about a few types of drafts and lump sum contributions and things of that nature, I want to talk about some automated ways to make your contributions or for your employees to make contributions. So we're talking about reoccurring account drafts. So that could be once or twice a month, be whatever date that employees would select. And the most popular way, of course, is payroll deduction. So we have many employers throughout the state that are already taking advantage of payroll deduction for their employees. So as an employer, you do have to set up an NC 529 plan to transmit employee contributions. And your employees must have a payroll deduction authorization agreement on file with the NC 529 plan. And of course, they would do their enrollment agreement. Tax-free. So as we talk about tax advantages, account earnings are free from federal and NC income taxes when they're used to pay for qualified educational expenses. And we talked about that a little bit at the very beginning. So again, when we're talking about qualified educational expenses, we're talking about those things like tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, other equipment. And then we may have some employers on the webinar today that have employees that may not be in North Carolina. They might be outside the state. So out-of-state residents pay no federal income taxes on account earnings used for qualified higher education expenses. But we do encourage them to check with their tax advisor regarding state taxes. So again, we want them to check with our tax advisor regarding state taxes. we're going to talk about flexibility. So savings may be used for the beneficiary's college at virtually any accredited college or university in the country. And so another thing that I want to point out as we're talking about flexibility, you can change your future contributions anytime. However, you can reallocate current funds as money that we have already received in the program twice each calendar year. Now, there's some new things that I want to make sure that you're aware of for the NC 529 plan. And like I said, my colleague, we're going to kind of tag team this afternoon, and he's going to talk about some of these things. But new to 529 plans is that you can use it for student loan payments, and it can be used for apprenticeship programs. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Skip Watts, and he's going to take over this part of the presentation.
Thanks, Tequila. Great job. Hello, employers. My name is Skip Watts. I'm the 828 regional rep for the 529 plan in North Carolina, and I'm here to talk specifically about K through 9 programs and how employees can benefit by saving through a North Carolina 529 plan. All right, so beginning in January 2018, North Carolina 529 participants may take out qualified withdrawals to pay for tuition or enrollment at attendance in private schools like a private middle school, elementary school, high school. They can also pay for religious setting environments as well. So if you want to send your kid to a school that has a predominantly religious focus, you can use 529 funds to pay for that opportunity. You can use up to $10,000 per beneficiary per calendar year with regards to these qualified K through 12 tuition expenses. Now, as Tequila alluded to earlier, trade school can be paid for with 529 funds. Trade school is a blossoming part of the higher ed spectrum, and a lot more students are choosing to participate in trade school programs like, for example, a lineman school. 529 funds can be used for that lineman school regardless of where that school is located in the country. Students can use 529 funds to pay for community college or technical school programs, four-year public universities, four-year private universities, or even graduate schools opportunities as well. Now, back in December 2019, the SECURE Act was created, and the SECURE Act stands for Setting Every Community Up for Retirement, signed into law, and it has some impact on student loan payments. 529 plans can now be used to repay student loans, but only up to a certain point. Up to $10,000 lifetime maximum for the 529 beneficiary, and up to $10,000 for each of their siblings can be used yearly to pay for student loans. Or excuse me, can be used one time for a maximum lifetime contributions. That can include siblings, brothers, sisters, stepbrothers, stepsisters. Participants can change their beneficiary at any time, and these are tax-free earnings on your 529 account that you can use to pay student loan interest, and that will not be eligible for the student loan interest deduction. If you have any other questions, you definitely want to contact your tax advisor to determine how using your 529 funds to repay student loans may impact you or your beneficiary. Now, going back to the SECURE Act, it also impacts apprenticeship programs, which is another blossoming part of the higher ed spectrum. 529 funds can now be used for qualified expenses. The apprenticeship must be registered and certified with the Department of Labor. Tequila mentioned this a few minutes ago. If you want to check to make sure your apprenticeship is registered, you'll go to apprenticeship.gov to make sure that 529 funds can be used to pay for that apprenticeship program. Again, contact your tax advisor to see how that'll impact you or your beneficiary if you choose to use 529 funds to pay for an apprenticeship program. Now, the 529 plan in North Carolina is comprehensive. We've got all kinds of investment options, and we designed those to meet your objectives, but at the same time, helping you to feel comfortable with your risk allotment. You may choose one or more of the following options. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different investment options, and the first one, the federally insured deposit account, is for folks that really like sleeping at night, like myself. Okay. It seeks to provide income plus protection on the principal and earnings through a federal deposit insurance. Okay, basically, the State Employees Credit Union in North Carolina guarantees that you can't lose your principal if the market fluctuates within this account. Okay. It's available to members of the State Employees Credit Union and non-members. So it's a really great opportunity for families that don't have a high acceptability for risk or market fluctuations. Now, we also have 3 age-based Vanguard investment options, and I find that a lot of families choose to invest in these age-based tracks because they're a little bit easier to keep up with. You don't have to develop your own portfolio, and also they tend to change a little bit as the student ages to guarantee the principal is saved. Now, there's an aggressive track, a moderate track, and a conservative track, all of which have different investment strategies from the beginning. So the next slide will detail that a little better. Okay, so you can see up at the top, we have an aggressive track and a moderate track and a conservative track. If a family chooses to invest in the Vanguard Aggressive Growth Portfolio, initially from the time the student is newborn to 4 years old, that's going to be a 100% stock portfolio. That is contrasted to the moderate track, which is at 87.5% stock and 12.5% bond portfolio. And then the conservative track is even less stock and more bond. Again, that's for somebody that doesn't want to put as much risk into their savings. And another thing to mention here while I'm on this slide is if you look down from newborn to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 years old, you can see that these tracks fluctuate. They start to get more and more conservative as the student gets older and closer to going to college going age. Essentially, that's to guarantee the principal and also the earnings that you've already locked in. So as the student ages from 11 to 12 to 13 to 14, you can see the aggressive track has already changed substantially from when the student was 0 to 4 years old. If you'll remember back, at that point, when the student was 0 to 4 years old, the aggressive track was like 100% stock. Now it's switched over 50% stock, 50% bond. You can see the conservative track is 75% bond in comparison to that. Now, as the student gets older, in any one of these age-based options, you can see between 17 and 18, it shifts over to about 25% stock or 75% bond in the aggressive track, 75% bond in the moderate track, and 25% bond, 75% short-term reserves for the conservative track. Essentially, we're trying to guarantee what money is locked in is there when your student goes to college. Now, there's all kinds of investment options as well that are individual. So parents can pick and choose what they think is most appropriate for their investment style. There's an aggressive growth portfolio, and that seeks to provide capital appreciation. There's a growth portfolio, which provides growth of capital and low to moderate income. And then there's a moderate growth portfolio that kind of speaks for itself, as does the conservative growth portfolio for those that really, again, like sleeping at night. The Vanguard income portfolio just seeks to keep that current income. Now, there's more investment options at the individual level. There's the Vanguard interest accumulation portfolio, and that seeks to provide income consistent with the preservation of principal. There's the total stock market index portfolio, which seeks to track the performance of a benchmark index that measures the investment return of the overall stock market. There's a total international stock index portfolio, and that tracks the performance of the benchmark index that measures the investment return of stocks issued by companies located in emerging markets outside of the United States. And then lastly, there's a total bond market, and that seeks to track the performance of a broad market weight bond index. Essentially, there's an option for every investor in the North Carolina 529 plan. Now, who all can contribute to the 529 plan? Anybody can contribute. It could be a parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be an uncle, it could be the neighbor down the street. I often tell family members that when looking for my son a Christmas present, that they might ought to consider putting some money towards his 529. I think that $25 in his 529 account as a Christmas or birthday present is way more valuable than a new video game or plastic toy. That's just my personal opinion as a parent. North Carolina 529 plan will allow maximum total allowable expected contributions of up to $500,000. I tell families, if you're trying to put in an annual contribution of $500,000, you could also consider buying a small private public or private liberal arts school somewhere for that same kind of money. The account owner is called the participant for 529 plan. The beneficiary is the person that is going to receive those benefits. They can be any age. There's no federal or North Carolina income taxes. You can time the withdrawals whenever the beneficiary goes to college, and there's no income restriction or adjusted gross income restriction on 529 plans in North Carolina. Now, this is new as of the last couple years. NC Able is combined efforts with the North Carolina 529 to offer a program called the 529A. The 529A allows people with disabilities to save for their own educational expenses or disability related expenses, or potentially for a friend or family member. A 529 account is solely to save for qualified expenses, qualified education expenses, but the 529A is not just for those educational expenses. It also allows for people with disabilities to save for qualified disability expenses. A good example would be a 529A can be used to defray disability-related expenses, such as additional medical costs not covered by Medicaid. This is an awesome program if you have a family member that's disabled, or perhaps if you are yourself. You can check this out at www.nc.savewithable.com for more information. Now, NC Able participants may now roll assets from a North Carolina 529 plan into an Able account used to pay for those qualified disability expenses. Okay. Rollovers are limited, though, to $15,000 per calendar year, 2019. Now, this is a really awesome program that we have on CFNC, and I'm a visual person, so I really like this savings calculator because it helps me to identify what my savings goals are for my teenager. And it's neat because you can put one child in, or you can add their siblings. You can add a bunch of different children in to figure out how much it's going to cost to send your family to college. So in this instance, I have just one child. He's a North Carolina resident. That's a fifth grader. My child's actually an eighth grader, but for this instance, I chose a fifth grader. I then selected that I'd like for him to consider attending a 4-year public school, and the 529 that I'm working to save on is going to be used to pay expenses for books and housing and tuition and other qualified expenses. It shows how much tuition inflation is proposed to be and how much the future cost is at that public university in North Carolina. It also allows me to calculate my current savings and then contrast that with how much I need to be saving to reach my savings goal and send my child comfortably to a public 4-year institution. So I think it's a wonderful program. It's a really neat tool because it actually shows you the dollar amount that you need to start saving to meet that savings goal for your child and their college attendance. Again, this is a great program. It's one of many different opportunities on cfnc.org that's associated with the North Carolina 529 account. So thank you very much for your time and your consideration. I'm going to turn it back over to Tequila.
Thanks, Skip. So now we're going to talk about setting up an NC 529 group plan for your employees. Here's some benefits for your employees. Again, just recapping some of the things that we mentioned throughout the presentation. But again, there are no enrollment fees or sales charges to open an account. Again, we talked about low minimum contributions of just $25 per contribution. There are multiple contribution methods, as my colleague mentioned to you, and age-based portfolios and individual multi-fund investment options. We talked about that. And again, account earnings are free from federal and NC income taxes when used to pay for qualified educational expenditures. And savings can be used at virtually any accredited college or university in the country. And then also don't forget, employees can use it for K-12 tuition, student loan repayment, as well as apprenticeship programs. Now, I also want to make sure that you're aware of this, as that the NC 529 plan is part of a larger initiative. So you may be familiar with College Foundation of North Carolina, which is a free information service to provide career planning, academic planning, applying and paying for college information to students and families throughout our state. And so, of course, by your employees participating in NC 529 plan, they also have access to the other things that are in the CFNC family or College Foundation of North Carolina family. So those services, again, are also available free of charge. Now let's talk about advantages for your company. So if you're planning on offering this as a benefit to your employees, you can do that through payroll deduction. And of course, there's no charge to do that. There are no setup fees or administrative charges to you as an employer. And it's open to employees in any state. So whether they're in North Carolina or another state, this is a national savings program. There's low maintenance and there's no governmental reporting. Let's talk about next steps. So if you're planning to offer this through payroll deduction, just want to make sure you know what you need to do in order to make that happen. So to start an NC 529 group plan, you'll have to complete the employer profile. So if you look at the right-hand side of my screen, I'm just giving you a visual so you can see what that form looks like. Once this has been submitted to our group plan specialist, you will obtain a 5-digit employer code. Now, the group plan specialist for the NC 529 plan will then contact you, and we're going to try to determine how your company will transmit employee deductions. And last but certainly not least, we have an amazing team of NC 529 regional representatives. And those representatives, depending on where you are in the state, you're assigned to one based upon your telephone area code, will contact you and then discuss how you want to share this information or this new benefit with your employees. Now, here's some transfer methods for payroll deduction. So payroll providers may use any of the following methods I'm about to talk to you about to transfer or transmit deductions with a payroll roster. So some examples would be, of course, a mail check. It could be EFT or electronic funds transfer. It may even be a wire transfer. So these are just some transfer methods for payroll deduction. Now, I also want to just share some information with you about just employer 529 contacts. We want to make sure that you're connected with us and want to work with you. And so again, you know, for day-to-day operations, you'll work directly with our NC 529 group plan specialist and just going to help you maintain your account and help with administration of the group plan on behalf of your employees. And so if you get a chance after the presentation, definitely go to our website. You can check out our employer page and see some of the information that we have for you. And then this is just some information about how to contact our NC 529 group plan specialist. So you'll see the email address there. And you can reach us by phone. We're available Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. and Friday, 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. Now, one of the things that I really love about our organization is that we just don't have business hours, but we have people hours. So that way we can better assist you as well as your employees. Now, a moment ago, I talked to you briefly about your regional representatives. And so you can see that here are the 7 individuals that I talked to you about based upon area code. So you can clearly see who your regional representative might be depending on where you are in the state. So this is giving you their telephone number, their email information, as well as you can connect with your regional rep through social media. And then we do have 2 Spanish services representatives that cover the whole state. We have Juana Hernandez as well as Juanes Ramirez. And so if you have Spanish speakers in your organization, they do travel to the state and can do presentations in Spanish. I want to just talk to you a little bit about the services offered by regional representatives. And so again, these are available to you as an employer and there's no cost for us to come out to participate in those things. So we do come out for benefit fairs, wellness fairs, participating in open enrollment events. It could be a webinar, lunch and learn series. We provide blogs and articles that you can put in your newsletter, or you can use it on your intranet posts. And then again, we do provide college and career planning sessions, you know, and then again, we talked about our Spanish speaking services. And so again, these are free for you to use as your as an employer. Now, I will tell you that due to the pandemic that we're experiencing right now, We are doing more things in a virtual environment, but we're still able to provide you with superior customer service. And so that's all the information that we have for you this afternoon to help you understand how the plan works and how you can offer this amazing benefit to your employees as an employer.